We've got 8 bills that will transform childcare in the state of Michigan, and it's just the start. But if we can get those through the Senate, which I think we will, that means a lot to me. That will be a little bit of a legacy.
Welcome to the Transform Podcast. My name is Luke Broyles, and I'm glad we're recording this time. We had a little bit of technical difficulty.
Detail.
And yes, little detail. I'm here with my friend Jack O'Malley. Jack, thanks for joining me on this conversation. I think we're going to have a good time.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, thank you. So before we get too far into the rabbit hole here, I'd love to have you go over a little bit of your background and how you got into politics here, because you are a representative of the Michigan State Legislature.
I am.
I think is really cool. Second term. So if you could just get into a little of, I'm very curious, why did you do this? Because you had a very successful career in radio and for 40 years, do I have that right? Or
yeah, I was in the business for 38, at WTCM in Traverse City for 34.
So over 40 years. Wow. Okay.
It was 38 years total.
38 years total. I see.
Four and 34.
Very nice. So why did you do this? Because when most people joke about going into politics, most people roll their eyes and like, why on earth would I do that? It sounds like a horrible amount of work with lots of bureaucracy. Why did you do it? What was your why?
Well, I guess there's a couple of whys. I guess I've always tried to have, so in my radio career, back when I started, the business was your goals were to inform, entertain, and educate. And I took those seriously. And so when I was on the air, of course I wanted to entertain, but I wanted to also educate people and inform them on things that were going on and be part of the community. And, maybe entertain and inform people in a way that didn't necessarily turn them off. Because maybe my politics weren't there, it wasn't their politics, So that's a fine line to walk, where you can maybe entertain everybody regardless of what side you're on, if you will. So that was always my goal, and to try and be community oriented, and to make sure that using the resources I had, and I worked for a great company, the Biederman family owned WTCM to this day, family owned, and they were very community oriented. So it was a good marriage. So, I was getting to the point where, I never served in the military, and it's always been kind of a regret, because, I want to give back. But the good Lord leads us for reasons, and the seat opened up, and I said to my wife, I think, this is an opportunity where I can use the talents God gave me to make a difference, my communication skills. And it was an opportunity to serve the country that I love and the state that I love. And so I jokingly refer to this as my 6-year hitch, with a tip of the hat to my friends and family that were in the military. And so that's kind of the short version of how I got here. I just want to serve, and as I said, use the talents that were given to me by God, and use them. Oop, I can't hear you.
Yeah.
Now I can.
Yeah. That's really interesting, because it seems to me that most people get into politics for whatever reason, and then they have to become a good communicator or public speaker.
Yeah.
But you had it the other way around, where you started out having 38 years of experience being a good public speaker, and then that has more or less translated into politics from there.
But long story short, a lot of people say, oh, why aren't you communicating like O'Malley? Well, my colleagues are lawyers, they're welders, they're farmers, they're bookkeepers. Well, you don't want me trying your case in court. You don't want me welding your frame. You don't want me plowing your field. You don't want me keeping track of your books. those are their talents. They understand that. I was using my talents, and so it's unfair to judge my colleagues by that. Why aren't I better in appropriations? Well, I wasn't an accountant. That isn't where I'm drawn. So yeah, I think we all use the talents we're given in the ways that work for us,
Yeah.
or should.
Yeah. And especially the region in Michigan, like you said, it sounds like there's a diverse background of previous professions for
Well,
all of your.
and that's the beauty of, I'm assuming, all legislatures, that's referred to as the People's House. There's 110 of us here in Lansing, and we come from all corners of the state and all backgrounds and stories. And that's the beauty of a legislature.
Yeah, it's wonderful. What is, now that everyone has the same job at the state legislature, being in the House, what does the daily activities look like for those of us that perhaps
Yeah,
don't know anyone in the government? Like, is it all just being sitting there, hearing people out, and going over paperwork? Is it mostly on the road? Is it a mix of both? Could you?
it's a
Yeah,
mix. So we're a full-time legislature, um, and so basically, on Monday afternoon, I live 3 hours away from the Capitol, so I don't go home. Many of the senators and representatives do, because they live close. I'm from the northern regions. So I drive down on Monday afternoons. Then I'm in session. I'm in town Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I drive home Thursday. And then kind of the joke is I'm in district Friday, not at home, in district at Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And that's when you meet with the locals, you grip and you grin, and you talk things through. Now, when we're in Lansing, I'm kind of because my years in radio, I still get up early, so I'm usually in the office between 6 and 6:30, which is nice because there's nobody around and it's quiet. And I go over the news of the day, see what's happening, that sort of thing, check my schedule. I have two staffers. One is a constituent liaison, and Cam also handles my scheduling. And then Eric is my legislative director, and he helps with all things legislative. And so between the two of them, it's been pretty busy, especially with COVID. But then it's a series of meetings and lunches, and like just before we got here, some constituents from the district stopped by, so I kind of gave them a quick tour of the Capitol, and they sat in the office here and we chatted. And then it's on to other meetings. Like today, good Lord, let's see here. I started with a meeting about transportation because I'm chair of transportation. Then we had a senior program in. Then I went over and talked to the rail meeting, the railroads. Again, transportation today. I also talked to the road builders. They're having a meeting, so I was over there. Then I came back and talked with some policy people on a bill I'm working on in the education field. Then the constituents. Now I'm talking to you. Then I have a gathering that I have to go to. Then it's a dinner with some different stakeholders to learn more about their issues. So that's my day.
so pretty much constant meetings and working on the
It's
goals
it,
that you
it's
have.
it's constant go 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 when you're in Lansing, because this is an opportunity to meet the people that are here and have meetings and things. So yes, it's a you're always going, even when you're at home. It's I could show you Friday and Saturday I'm doing things, and Monday. I try to keep Sundays to the family.
Yeah, yeah. So when you're here and this period of time you have serving in the state legislature, what is your top priority? We already mentioned a little bit education and transportation, but if you know you could have one thing go through, or one single piece of change, lasting piece of change, what do you think you will look back on and be the most proud of, or desire the most to have happen?
So when I was knocking doors my first time, running, I'd say, what's the issues that's most important to you? And for those of you from Michigan, no fault auto insurance reform was big, and fix the roads. And then there was a third issue, childcare. And if look at me here, it's been a while since I've had anybody in childcare. So I was like, huh, what's that? Well, I got elected and I did some snooping, and we talked to child care providers, and we did a lot of work. Found out that childcare in the nation is hurting, but in Michigan it's in bad shape. So you would think, I'm playing against type a little bit here. You would think, oh, women and families, and that's a Democratic issue. But here's this old white guy that looks like Santa who is championing. We've got 8 bills that will transform childcare in the state of Michigan, and it's just a start. But if we can get those through the Senate, which I think we will, the governor's ready to sign them, I will be able to say that I helped bring childcare back. And that means a lot to me. That will be a little bit of a legacy. And I hope to get reelected for my 3rd and final term so that we can kind of finish up other things that are needed in childcare. But I think that is would be a great legacy to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially something that's not just a road, but actual human beings that be able
Yeah,
to help.
exactly.
Yeah.
And there's some other things we're working on, but you asked for the number one. And
Mhm.
when I started running, I'd have never thought I was the champion for childcare, but uh, that's kind of how it worked out. So I'll take the path, and I busted through the door. Let's go.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. For those of us or for those out there that are not from Michigan, could you go into a little bit of what the problems are that are in Michigan? You said there's more of a national problem, but then Michigan also is a part of that problem. So what specific problems does Michigan have that maybe other states don't, or just if you can get
So
into.
yeah. So and childcare is an issue everywhere. So I'm sure I'm not in every state, but every state's got their nuances. But one of the big things is early childhood development. The state wants, to make sure that kids are learning and growing and all that good stuff. Not opposed to it. But what LARA, licensing and regulation of department, did was they started adding on new rules, new regulations. Part of what they were trying to do was get kids focused on center-based childcare, not in-home or family style. Well, that's fine to a point, but most people still prefer the family in-home childcare. And especially in rural Michigan and rural states, we have communities of, 3,000, 4,000 people. There's not enough kids to have a center where there's 20 or 30 kids, right? Plus, all the regulations just kept driving cost up and up and up. And one of the big arguments was always thrown in my face was, well, we want our kids safe. We want to change these rules. We want to fix this. Well, we want our kids safe. Of course we do. But if you keep adding regulations, you're going to get to the point where you've made it so safe, nobody can afford it. And now you're sending your kid to an unregulated child care, or somebody goes underground and nobody even knows they're a child care. And the other thing you have to understand is kids fall down and scrape knees. Now, if somebody is, using a whip on a kid, obviously that's egregious. You can't do that. Throw them in jail. But, if they've got a wooden spoon and not a plastic one, or a metal one, don't throw the book at them. And that's where we got it. Sometimes there's just the regulations are they're onerous. So one of the bills in our package says, hey, if you're an in-home daycare and the state institutes a new rule, you have 90 days to get it done and implement it before you're being penalized for not doing it. It's just common sense kind of thing. So those are some of the things. So, but childcare, we need it. It's part of the workforce issue. Why are we having worker shortage? Well, mom and dad, somebody's got to stay home and watch a kid because there's not enough childcare. So, and then there's the people who say, well, parents should stay home and watch their kids. You shouldn't even have daycare. That might have been fine when I was a young man, and a kid, but not in today's world. So, and if it's a single mom, I want her working. I don't want her on public assistance. I want her working and being part of the community. And so let's help her. Let's help her have a place that they can put their child and know they're safe.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point about how safety is a wonderful thing, but when there's too much regulation, safety from from the public sector, essentially, that
See?
overregulation makes it so expensive that we have to resort to unregulated
Yeah.
avenues.
You defeat your own purpose.
Yeah, defeat your own purpose. And I think, yeah, it's a very, well, maybe not so much unrelated issue, but the obvious COVID issue of the last 2 years, I think also to a certain extent is along that line where everyone wants to be safe, and that's a priority. We can have that common goal, but different people interpret safety in different ways and different thresholds of safety. And some people go too far, some others not enough, and then you get all
Yep.
this clashing between those two groups of individuals, those that want safety, more safety, and those that want not necessarily less safety, but want to focus more on the practical mindset too. And so with all that discourse, and discourse is perhaps putting it lightly, all the politicization of safety and all that's going on, both in education and also just the world at large the last 2 years. One of the things I admire about you is that you've been very bipartisan and you work with those across the aisle. I've watched many of your live streams and your posts and everything, and you won an award recently. And I think in part of because your ability not to cast names at the other side, but willing to work with others to see things differently than you.
Yeah.
And so I'm really hoping you could dive into that a little bit, because that's clearly needed in today's world. I'm sure both in the child care and other
Yeah.
issues as well. But
Well, so Luke, I guess how I would answer that is, um, if we want to really save this country, we should do away with the 24-hour news channel. The problem with that is everybody we've so sided up. You're a righty, you're a lefty, and that's the way it is. And we've gotten this angry mode. And when you get here and you realize, so in Lansing, I'm sure other states have a similar saying with different numbers depending on their makeup. But in Lansing, you need 56, 20, and 1 to get anything done. 56 representatives who vote yes, 20 senators who vote yes, and 1 governor who signs the bill. If you're not working together, if you're just doing this all the time, nothing will ever get done. Now, some people might say that's a good thing. I don't know. But there's a difference between being a table thumping citizen, which in some ways I was prior to coming here. And when you get here, you realize that it takes a little extra work to govern. There's a difference between armchair quarterbacking, which I did plenty of, as the old saying, I point one finger at you, there's 3 back at me. You got the armchair quarterbacks. Why aren't they doing this? Why aren't they doing that? Well, it's easy to do that when you're sitting there with your buddies and they all, yeah. But when you're in, and I point because the chamber's just over there, when you're in that chamber and you got to get 56 votes, you got to make sure you haven't got everybody mad at you, and you've got to work across the aisle. And I'm a Republican, are there Democrats that I think are wacky? I think there's a few Republicans that are wacky. They're all good people. Don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking them personally, but just it's like, whoa, where are you coming from with that stuff? So you got to work with each other to govern, to get to 56, 20, and 1. So I think that's something that I've tried to do. The other thing, Luke, that I know that's popped up in a lot of places is, you're my representative. You got to vote what I tell you. Okay, but I got somebody over here who disagrees with you who's saying, you're my representative. You got to vote what I tell you. A representative is just that, a representative. You know who I am. You know how I think. I've heard this side and I've heard this side, and now I have to decide. I'm a one person jury, if you will, for the district. And even though I might be a Republican, I represent everybody in my district. And even though I may not agree with the Democrats, I want to hear from them because everything they're saying isn't wrong on a particular issue. I'll be honest with you, in many ways, this child care issue, I've worked hand in hand with quite a few Democrats in the district. They're not wrong, they're right. So I'm going to represent them because I know it's fixing the problem. So governing and armchair quarterbacking are two different things. And it's not always easy, but I represent everybody in my district. And sometimes that's hard for people to understand.
Yeah. It sounds like that being there, literally sitting across from the chamber in your from your desk is very different than most of us just
Yeah.
like you said, staring at 24-hour news. So
yeah, it is. And people get emotional, and I get that. And that's okay, but you can't get to the point where you're so emotional you stop logical thinking.
yeah.
No, no one is 100% right. There's nuances, and somebody might not agree with you 100%. So it's a balance, and I get it. And I mean, it's been going on for 245 years in the United States of America. So you know, you read about some of the things that were going on in Lincoln's time, and even back, when our founding fathers were around. There were some disagreements, and there were some arguments, and the newspapers printed some pretty nasty stuff about people. So it's not like this is brand new.
Yeah, no, definitely not. It'll be around for, well, the rest of the time. Almost, well, certainly. So
Yeah.
and children are one of those things I think that everyone can move forward towards in a positive regard. So is this something that you think not only is a point of legacy in your career, not just because of the fact that you're helping children, but also for the fact that perhaps it can bring both sides of the aisle and both sides of the public together on this? Or do you think that there's going to continue to be that disagreement?
I think child care specifically, we'll get we're going to we got it out of the House with I forget the vote, but the 8-bill package passed overwhelmingly bipartisan. I'm waiting. We're going to have a hearing in the Senate in a week. I expect it to move out of there, and then the governor's waiting to sign it. And so I think we're going to be in good shape. Is this one issue that has brought people together? I think so, but there's always some other issue coming along that's going to separate us again. So the kumbaya moment might not last real long, but we'll try and make it last as long as we can.
Yeah, that's a good thing anymore, especially. So, Lord willing, it goes through, hoping it goes through. What then, looking in the rear mirror, what do you think the lasting changes will be? What does it specifically intend to do? And then what ripple effects on society do you think it will have?
Hopefully, what we want to do is we've got COVID money, federal money, that is one time for childcare. We're going to use it, and one of the bills specifically in Michigan, there are 10 counties with absolutely no infant or toddler care. No, so this money, part of the money would go to these 10 counties, saying, "Look, Luke, we're going to hire you to be a daycare provider, a child care provider. Obviously you have to be legal and all that stuff, but that way we can jumpstart, and now people will come to you because we're paying you to get going, right? Once you're up and running, it's hands off. It's not like you're going to be working for the state, but it's a jumpstart. There's also money to provide liaisons between the state rules and people who are getting back into the profession, trying to bring some of those people back. You got to remember, child care providers, in-home daycare, deal with LARA, Michigan Department of Education, and DHHS. They all have something to say there. So, I always use the name Susie Smith. Susie Smith is an in-home daycare, and she's got to work with three of the biggest state departments there are. So those are things that we're hoping to do. There's also a program that's not part of this package, but it is another package out there. There's a pilot program called TriShare, and there's several of them across the state. The parent pays a third, the employer pays a third, and the state pays a third. TriShare, seeing if that's a way to help get child care back going. My hope is that we can jumpstart this. We can bring people who left the industry back. We can help get new people involved, and we can lower those regulations so that we still have safety, but we don't have such burdensome rules. And hopefully quickly here we can get the child care industry back up. And then we have another set of bills that we're working on that would say, hey, look, again, schools themselves, a school, from 8 a.m. to 3:30, they can watch kids, but at 3:30, all the rules change, and they have to have different people and different rules to watch kids after school. That's a place where you should have child care. And as our population shrinks a little bit, less kids in schools, our schools have room to have these things. So it's exciting to see if we can figure this out, and I think we can. I think we're heading in the right direction, and only time will tell. But at least we'll have opened things back up so that people can succeed and not get trampled by the rule book.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like that's one of those examples of getting rid of those rules that will allow the amount of total safety to increase. So
kind of the free
yeah,
market idea. Let's get these people back. We and then you get well, why are you helping subsidize, people? Well, first of all, we need these people in the workforce. So if it's a young couple that are scraping together, let's make sure that we can help them. There are federal rules, federal programs. We can help them with that child care for a while. And as you make more, it tapers off. But let's get this workforce going. Let's get this back going so that we get people back in the workforce, and we know our kids are safe. So I'm excited, and we'll see how it all plays out here in the years to come.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I see what you mean, especially with how I'm sure the more conservative folks be like, you're doing government spending on this, blah, blah, blah. But then you have the more liberal folks that are equally as upset with you because you're cutting regulation, and yet you're just trying to do what's best for the kids.
Well, and on the spending piece, all right, we can have, a single parent on government assistance staying home because they can't go to work because they can't afford childcare or there is no childcare, or we can give them some assistance for a short while so they can get back to work and be paying taxes and being an important part of the community. So, I mean, it's where do you want to spend the money and what's the most productive? Where do you get the most return? Parent A stays at home and watches their kid, and we give them all sorts of aid. Or we help them support that child care provider. Now that person's making money and being an independent person. We've got the parent back at work, the kids it's safe. It's a better use of money, I think.
Yeah, it sounds like it to me. So before we go, I know, Jack, you're a Christian, and I would love to hear a little bit about, and I know you don't speak about this as much because of your public role, church and state, all that. But I'd love to hear a little bit about how your faith and your fellowship with Jesus has influenced your career, and how you go through this personally on a spiritual level.
Well, you're asking a very personal question there, Luke. So real quick, I'll try and give you the short version of this because there's 62 years of story here. But my parents were Depression era kids. Dad fought in the Pacific in World War II, got married. They got married after that. They had 2 children die at birth in the late 40s. And my mother, who was like 5 foot nothing, went to her doctor and said, I'm going to continue to have children, and you have to do them by way of cesarean section. Back in the 50s, that was like, no, we don't do that. She said, if you don't do it, I'll find somebody who will. So my little mother, who I believe had a direct connection, uh, bucked it, and my two sisters were born by way of C-section. And then several years later, they were born. Mom and dad were 44 years old, which back in 1959 was pretty dang old. I came along. My mother, who I again believe had a spot, uh, she told me I was here for a reason. She didn't know what that reason was, but she told me I was here for a reason. So I have spent my entire life trying to figure out what that reason was. And I've always tried to do the right thing. I've always tried to help people, tried to help make the world a better place. You asked me why I got into this. I want to use the talents that God gave me to make a difference. And I don't know if you can see this. So I always thought, how do you pray? What do you say? I'm just a simple guy. And I talk to God all the time on when I'm in the car. And the other thing I learned about prayer, I won't give you all the whole backstory, but there's this very interesting nuance to prayer. After you pray, you have to listen. And life is so noisy. We pray, but we don't listen. And I started listening. And one day I said, I was at a crossroads in my life. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I said, God, I don't know what to do. Give me relief. I turn it over to you. And Luke, like that, I had a calm that came over me. And I won't say that from that day forward, I have no fear, because I am a weak human being. But generally speaking, it's like, I'm here for a reason. And I'll know what that was when I'm dead. I'll be up there in the pearly gates and say, okay, here's why you were here. So the prayer, how do you pray? What do you say? And so it hit me one day. I was listening to somebody talk, and they said, this is the simplest prayer there is. And so I call my district the Fighting 101. It's the 101st. So there's a thing I put on my desk. So when people come in, it says Fighting 101, right? You can see that?
Yep.
This is what I see. That's the simplest prayer there is. Thy will be done. You tell me what to do. Not my job.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. It's going to work. And I'll tell you a quick story. I've never been in front of a hostile crowd. I was in radio, like selling ice cream. Everybody's happy. So I go to my first candidate forum with the opposition, and it was a hostile crowd. It was ugly. And they're yelling at me and this, and I got defensive. And having been a bit of a performer, I think I'm a fairly good critiquer. All right, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And that night, I realized that I was more worried about me and how I looked and what I thought. And I realized, no, wait a minute here. I'm here to do the right thing and get something done. So I'm not here for me. I'm here for God. And so I'm going to be fine, because I'm going to let him use the talents he gave me to get this job done. And from then on, I went into these things, and I called it rope-a-dope. If you remember the old Muhammad Ali thing, you can say whatever you want about me. It doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you what I think and how I want to move forward with things, because that's what I got to do. So, yeah, that will be done. I have no idea what's coming, but I'm going to do the best I can to make sure that it's done right and to the best of my ability. And again, use the talents I got. So that's kind of my spiritual path. And I know I've always got my back covered. So, plus, I think Catherine's up there keeping an eye on me too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that.
You
That's,
bet.
I think that's a really good view on life. Cause, even whether it's radio or government, even, we're only here and our government's only here because God allows it to be. So really at the end of the day,
Yeah,
it's thy will be done, not ours. So,
I will be done.
yep.
It's the simplest, most concise prayer I think you can have. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
You tell me.
Yeah.
Lay it out in front of me, and if I listen, I'll know how to move forward.
Yeah. Well, I'll be thinking of you and hoping that this goes through because you're a very smart man. I'm sure everything you said, will will hopefully work out. We'll see, but it
Yeah.
appears that it will. And both of these sound like really good things. So thank you so much
Well,
for your time.
I appreciate it, and I
Yeah.
hope your career continues to blossom. And you got a good career ahead of you. And I would just say, anybody out there, get involved in your community. Whether it be on a city council, school board. School boards are huge, or just whatever. But get involved, volunteer somewhere. We're getting so separated from each other with social media and whatnot that we need that. So
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jack.
if you want change, you got to work for it.
That's right. That's right. And I hope that we both can work for it with the talents that God has given us for his will. So,
Amen.
yeah. Thanks, Jack.
You're welcome. Thank you, Luke.